G'day legends, I hope that you're having a fantastic day and an even better weekend. Now it's only going to be 1 or 2 more videos until I'm back in my studio, so ignore me when I look down to look at my notes and how these may be a little more clunky than usual. But in the last week, of course, we've seen this large offensive across into Russia from Ukraine and the success that is having in areas, and also questions asked about what is the end goal here. And there's a lot of speculation around that, even from Ukrainian groups, Russian groups, of where is Ukraine trying to go? Is it the power plant? Is it to align? Is it to get an area? Is it for a swap? And what I will say is there's so many ideas out there floating around, and we won't know the answer for that until down the line. Now, something we are seeing so much of online is old footage being recycled and claimed as new. Look at these tanks rolling through this built up area, or this or that, or look at this explosion. And I'm seeing this on both sides, including like passports and this and that, or attacks that is recycled content from older attacks. So the fog of war is massive. And I've seen people go, oh gee, it seems like the bots are really active at the moment. And if you ever watched my video that the maths department at a university did near me, they did a study on bots, and they could actually study when an attack happened or when somewhere was being attacked, and the uptick in the amount of bot activity. So of course there's bots trying to downplay this, there's bots trying to upplay it, and you and me, we're just trying to go through the noise and see what is actually happening. The good thing that's on our side is time is on our side, and eventually we will know exactly what has happened here, although we may be a little bit further behind pure speculation. So that's something to look at. But when I speak of bots, just because someone has a differing opinion to you, that does not make them a bot at all. But let's get stuck into this today. Now, what we're going to look at, we're going to look at strikes from Ukrainian drone boats. We're going to look at the north. We'll do the north in the first. We'll look at maps. We'll look at strikes. We'll look at int I've been sent. We'll also look at the maps in other areas. It's easier to forget there is well over 1,000 kilometers of other front line, and that is moving in fluid regions too. And of course, we've actually seen in the last few days, Ukraine made some ground in New York front too. Now, I triggered a lot of people yesterday in some comments when I said presence, just because there's a presence of troops does not mean controlling. And many people jumped on board and said, this is massive hypocrisy coming from yourself, because you all the time are pointing out, hey, look, there's footage of, like, say, Russian soldiers in here, and it is shown as green or blue or grey and not red. Now, what I will say in this, and this goes both ways, regardless of who's moving, when we're talking down in the south and the east, we are comparing an attritional grinding trench warfare compared to a highly maneuverable force with then forward reconnaissance, sabotage, DRG groups as well. So this, of course, comes a much more into play in that rather than the attritional phase. When you have that attritional grind, if there's presence, control is much more likely than if you just have a pop-up of a shootout somewhere as well. So I think the grey zone should be expanded in actually many areas as well. And this was the exact same we said about Russia's Vovchansk push. Just because there's a DRG element or recon element somewhere, presence and control are very different things, especially in highly mobile maneuver warfare like this, and it is highly fluid. So I hope that clears that up. Now, there's a few things I've seen in this that I think are then signs and things we need to talk about. Now, of course, there's been a lot of speculation about what the West's reaction to this would be, because what we know is Ukraine really hasn't had much permission to not only use weapon systems across the border, although that has been lifting, but to themselves have Ukrainian attacks across the border. Now, from what we've seen, the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense really hasn't actually spoken about this that much, but neither has other ministries or governments around the world either. So what I'll say is this has basically been a bit of a green light, that I think Ukraine with this, either it was in line with behind the scenes, yep, permission, good to go, take the Western weapons across, or a bit of you better to ask for forgiveness than permission. And now that, you know, it's not like they've turned the tap off somewhere on supply to Ukraine, it's actually been, I guess, a way of permission to then launch attacks across like this. Now, I want to talk about what I think actually is the biggest success for Ukraine in this attack, if we don't consider land being taken. I actually think the biggest one is Ukraine's OPSEC. Regardless of this attack currently in the last few days, Ukraine had huge operational security issues internally, especially when we consider last year, the 2023 counteroffensive. It was said that it was basically completely leaked and Russia knew exactly what was happening. And what has happened here is there has been like none of this leak, and that OPSEC has been very tight. So what I'm going for this, that to me means a lot of the people leaking OPSEC, people working as spies, however, have been flushed out of the system. And we have seen Ukraine getting rid of a lot of people, not only in intelligence sectors, but also in government, lots of different areas. And I would be, if I was a Ukrainian commander looking at this going, right, because this was so watertight, we've flushed out the right people needed, if then that makes sense. And another thing is, regardless of even if this pulls back, Russia is going to have to allocate a lot of assets to reinforce the border, both troops and vehicles and digging trenches as well, due to the breakthrough of this. So let's look at the maps. We'll look at what's going on in the north and we'll look at some strikes. So let's look at what I've been told as well from a guy who was going dark. I expected not here for a couple of days, but I've heard across the border still 2 days to return. Objectives are being made slowly. Losses are very low. Should have been none if command was professional. Enemy is massing air force to attack Kharkiv, Sumy, Kiev, and other to destroy our civilian infrastructure. We are evacuating Russian civilians with our advances. People being looked after. Enemy forces trying to counterattack, but we know their approach vectors and prepare for them, as you've seen. Next week, a lot more will be happening. So that... Currently, that's all been known. This was the same guy who he was saying we needed significantly more air defense assets to try and take down those drones. Like we spoke about the first day this happened, that yes, it crossed over, but Russia did see it happening. There was a lot of ISR elements and assets in the air. He was the one saying to me that needed to be dealt with. And if we learn anything from it, more man-portable air defense to try and take those down in here as well. As I spoke about in the beginning, we're not exactly sure what Ukraine's end goal is in here. What is the objective of this advancement? You can see then this is the Noel reports map. Yes, there's some other blue here. We're going to speak about this. Now, it is a long way to Kursk where the nuclear power plant is, and I struggle to believe it. The amount that this can't just go in one run. It has to balloon out to stabilize as things move. And I just think the PR nightmare that would cause is massive. I don't know, but what I want to say in this is when we're talking about elements like this, movements like this, and I speak about the PR nightmares, remember that I've spoken about over the last 3-6 months, if not longer, when things get desperate, when things get messy, keep your eyes open for false flags and finger pointing events. Okay, now, so let's have a look and, whoa, geez, what have I done? That's not talking about one side or the other. What I've been saying is at some point in this war, it's going to get desperate for one side due to, if it is military action alone. That's where things like this can then occur, especially when you're dealing with elements and things like nuclear power plants, all of this sort of thing. Now, we can see here that we'll just use NOAA reports map. We'll also show you Syriac, but you can actually see that this has slowed down. Now, this is something that is always going to take effect in offensive action. As you move forward, you have to widen. Therefore, your front line gets significantly longer, like blowing up a balloon. Things slow down. Your logistics too, you need to start rotating soldiers. People don't realize how fatiguing shit like this is, and just sleep, food, water, all of this, as well as Russia deploying, massive assets into here. And like we've spoken about, could Russia move a lot of assets into here? Ukraine take the ability to hit these on the roads, which we have seen, and what Ukraine then do is just open up another front. We have seen a few areas open up. So we saw down in here, we saw then open up around Kuchov. So there is some, at least, movement across the border here on the 10th, according to Noel Reports' map. Then there's some down further as well in Poroz. Now, I will show you some geolocations of this, but there then is another one too. So we're seeing two small incursions across, and then another one at Tietkino up here as well. Now, this is the Syriac maps, just to give you an idea that this is where this is currently. So this is some, let's go 50 Ks out to the west. Now, this map doesn't show that then to my eye, and we have some proof of these happening. So this is the Tyantyino one. This is from then Our Wars Today, claiming this, that notices soldiers and locals past few days filled with heavy bombardment and shelling of the Russian border village, and they could be assaulting through a border breach. So we're not exactly sure yet what is happening here, but just keep your eyes open here as well. And this is, I believe, down in Poroz. So we're talking then down, this is Poroz down in here. We have then seen this image come out called Georgian flag here, Ukrainian flag, and then that is geolocated down into here as well. You can see where Sumy and Shuja is at the moment, where there's a hell of a lot of fighting. We'll talk about specifically what is happening in here. Now, I spoke in the beginning about this highly mobile maneuver warfare and this moving, and if it comes to a stop, that's probably when Russia's going to get the advantage with things like FABs and artillery pieces moving up. And as we can see that this has slowed up a little bit. We've seen some other fronts. We've seen this around Suja here as well. Just today, we can see the 10th, and we can see up here on the 10th. But you can see the movements on the 7th, the 8th. So is slowing down. Now, something that was brought up to me from a follower of mine did say, Ukraine's best bet, being the smaller force, highly mobile force, and therefore combined arms, is to keep moving. The problem is going to be in winter when movements are limited and things may stop or at least slow down. It would be very interesting to see what position Ukraine is in before then this occurs. So that is something interesting to talk about as well, of then the element of maneuver warfare. Now, as you can see by Noah Reports' map, this is just basically his screenshot of the same map we're showing you on the other tab. There has been some reclaimed areas, and now Russia's reinforcements pushing back into here to try and get some ground. And you can see where he's putting Armed Forces of Ukraine presence, as well as then ground taken and being held currently. So let's then have a look on Syriac map and see what he is showing here. How do I move this across? Here we go. So showing fairly similar on this ballooning out here, but not to the same degree out to some of these northern areas, although I believe in some areas actually showing a fair bit more. Ukrainian army crossed the Psel River and entered the first houses of Plekhovo. Now, this is Plekhovo down here. Funnily, Syriac map is actually showing significantly more than this map. So this is Plekhovo down here. So he's showing out to the eastern side here, a fair bit more control, as well as in then these areas up to the north of here, more control as well. Situation in Suja starts to become clearer. Ukrainian forces previously entered these from the south. As Suja itself, the western part is no man's land, while the eastern part is disputed between the two sides. Situation in the north is unclear and is considered a grey zone up to the at least the localities of these. So I think in the north, where we see some of this stuff, it is difficult to know. Controlled grey zone, like I spoke about in the beginning, and the flack I got around what is presence and control, that is pretty blurry at the moment. We have highly mobile units and DRG elements, but you can see by this map, it's saying that Suja is completely under Ukrainian control, and this is disputed by Syriac, that he is saying the eastern part is disputed and that the western part is no man's land. So that, read into that as you will about the contest over Suja here itself, but we will see, and we will see a lot more counterattacks over the next coming days, but we may see more incursions in other areas as well, like we're seeing on those three that I have shown you. Now, a lot of people, we spoke then about the opening on other fronts, movements of Russian forces to try and reinforce, to push this back, Ukraine pushing across, nuclear power plants, false flags, all of this. There's a lot of people too, and I just try and present what a lot of people are feeling. There's a lot of people saying in their theory that what Ukraine is doing here is trying to push into an area to try and threaten areas in here to cause Russia to have like an overreaction here, whether it strikes somewhere using of certain weapons, however that may look, to cause an overreaction, large enough that NATO will either reinforce Ukraine militarily with weapon systems or themselves come in, or then even sanction Russia harder or other areas. That is an interesting concept to look at too. Is it trying to push on an overreaction? I guess that folds into what we've spoken about, potential false flags too, but you can see that the other way too, to try and discredit aside and how that may look. It is definitely all up in the air. And as I said, the primary goal of this so far, I'm not 100% sure, but it doesn't mean that there's one goal to it. It can be draw soldiers away, it can be a PR victory, it can be to get to a certain area and hold that for upcoming peace conferences. I think it's probably a mixture of then a lot of different things too. But as far as massive 4D chess, I'm still not really leaning into this. But we have seen, speaking on that, something else come out. Now, I can't confirm or deny if there was a breach of Belarus's air zone, but Lukashenko, the leader of Belarus, has said that there was about a dozen Ukrainian drones then cross into Belarus, and Belarus are deploying air defense onto the border of Ukraine along with troops. Now, Belarus, of course, is a very close ally to Russia. This is Belarus, this star here, if you can see this border along, has a large border in the north of Ukraine. Russia has used this before to cross troops into then on the Kiev offensive in the beginning of the war. And we have spoken many times that an opening up here so far away from the line would cause a lot of issues. Now, the quality of the Belarusian military is always very questionable unless you're like karate chopping bits of wood on fire. But what we have seen is experienced elements of Wagner PMC, not the prisoners, the full-time guys. Once everything happened and, you know, Prigozhin and Wagner, everything, a lot of them moved across into Belarus to train the forces. And I know from experience how much effect that can actually have on small team tactics, having experienced guys there to help out. We've seen a lot of that, and obviously still there now, well over a year on. That quality of some elements may actually be improved. And we've actually seen, of course, a deployment of a number of different systems into Belarus as well. And could there be an opening up of something here to try and draw further forces a long, long way away as well? Is there setting up for that? Now, I don't know, but I just, again, bringing you everything forward. The Belarusian side demanded comprehensive measures to be taken to rule out any such future incidents in the future, which could lead to further escalation of the situation in the region. That's from Russian media of Belarusian Ministry of Press. It was pointed out that if Ukraine's diplomatic representation in Belarus cannot have an effect on preventing such provocations, the Belarusian side will raise the issue of the appropriateness of its continued presence in Minsk. So maybe a diplomatic kick out there too. So just bringing that forward, as that's an incident that has happened. Can't confirm or deny if the incident did happen with drones crossing, but bringing forward that, you know, you never know what elements are moving where. Now let's have a look at a couple of strikes. Now, this is fighter bomber confirming a Kar-52 downs. Now, in the first day of this, we did see a Kar-52 on the ground, and we said we don't know if the pilots survived or not. Now, some are saying this confirmation here isn't another Kar-52. It is that Kar-52, but saying that the pilots were killed in that attack. Now, we are seeing a lot of claims around multiple choppers, I've seen up to 7 or 8 aircraft too. Again, wait for evidence, video, photos, satellite of this, or confirmed by the side of which lost it, if that makes sense. Man pads at point blank range, so man portable air defense. The pilots knew they can't cope without them, so the pilots, he's saying that the guys on the ground know that without the pilots there, they can't cope. The pilots are fighting. The Air Force takes no prisoners, but confirming the downing there. Now, fighter bomber has said this then about the aircraft. All aircraft and crews are in place, so he's suggesting they haven't lost any. Other pages are saying there are many losses. Again, wait for confirmations or photographs. They're shelling hard practically on every sortie, but to no avail. I hope it will stay that way. So they're trying to hit them, but he's saying to no avail. The main enemy for aircraft near Kursk is the S-300 and Patriot. For helicopters, man pads. So helicopters, you're flying a lot lower and really close air support. So man pads is the huge danger there. And aircraft, higher dropping things, you'd more S-300 and Patriots too. So these in play around that area, which we would have then presumed. So it will be interesting to see if we get more confirmation of strikes coming down. Kicking bloody stuff. Now, speaking of Kar 52s, this is something I haven't really seen that much. So this is actually a Kar 52 looking through one of the targeting lenses here. Now, you can't exactly see what it is here, but there is something flying in the air, maybe a drone, and it's actually an air-to-air kill from a Kar 52 missile. You can see fired off here, striking then in the air. So again, just showing you guys interesting footage of things I haven't then seen. But we are seeing today more strikes on Ukrainian equipment. Now, the Ukraine's OPSEC here has been pretty tight. The amount of footage actually coming out of Russian losses is actually a lot of Russian footage coming out and people being then arrested for that. But we have a little bit more coming out from Russia here too. So this is, I can't show this on the Telegram, but there is a T-62BV, I believe here, and you can actually see it then firing multiple times, and then there is a Lancet strike and then a catastrophic detonation of that piece of equipment we know with the autoloader inside. Now, is that a design flaw? Well, it depends the era of when these tanks were made. Now, T-series tanks, they're a lot lower because at the era they were made, you're facing more front-on weapon systems than top-down attack, javelins, drones, things like this. So the autoloader is the ability to have a much smaller vehicle, much smaller footprint on the ground. Different vehicles, different purposes, very different eras. And it'd be very interesting to see how the next tanks are looking, because the susceptibility of heavy armor or light armor to cheap drones seems about the bloody same. But this was geolocated here. This is an interesting bit. Some 14.5 kilometers, so 9 miles in. Now, I do have here claimed, because I haven't seen people disputing this, but the people sharing it, they were saying like, I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure it's here. So again, operating some almost 15 Ks then behind the line in tanks and moving there. Again, tanks very thirsty, use a lot of fuel. We'll see how the logistics can hold up. I can't show this here. Again, on the Telegram, I just put it up, but we see from Russian media here, we can see a Ukrainian column moving here with then 5 vehicles get struck by Tornado S airbursts here as well, and claims of large casualties there. We are seeing a lot of strikes on convoys and columns moving too, and just the amount of air assets with a camera on it, from satellites to drones to even dudes on iPhones. This is, nothing can move in warfare without it bloody being seen. That is just a huge problem going forward for absolutely anything. Now, what I will say, the deep state map, it hasn't updated the maps in here at all yet. So the gray zone should be way out beyond Suja here. Gray zone should be way out above the top. So again, wait out. It hasn't shown any of these other movements across into Belgorod or Tyantkino either. So I don't know what's going on here, because you'd think this would be good wins because this is like the primary map. I don't know. But we'll show you other maps in a second. Now, here is something that's going to require a little bit of mental gymnastics, but stick with me. So we have more footage from Group 13 here, of course, who operate the Magura V5 drone boats and the other BECs as well. Now, what we can see, and the first thing that struck me with this, and this is a lower quality because of the download, but you can see that Russian helicopters, just chopper here, trying to then engage these. But one thing that stuck out to me straight away, this is my downloading of this poor quality, but go look on the Telegram, it's better, how much the camera has actually improved on these as well. It looks like it's stabilized as well. Now that can be done in post, but again, not sure. But what it then strikes is another one of these like fast attack Russian patrol boats in here. You can see this one approaching very slowly into here, and we'll have a det taking that off. Now, one of the things I did say in the mental gymnastics is it's almost like these were too effective over too long of a period. So what happened, because you saw very effective strikes, but it seemed like it took a long time between them. And because they were that effective, it almost gave Russia the time to go, we're going to get thrashed if we keep these large warships here. So then it's forced Russia to move those warships out of areas without gates or into Sea of Azov or other areas. So now that these are, they may have free range in there, but all they have to hit is ferries and the patrol boats there too. So maybe what I was saying is maybe weight, so you can take down a lot at once, because the massive targets in here anymore, those large ships, have then moved out. Yes, it's taken some of those out of the battle, or they have to fire missiles a lot further, giving you more time for interception and early warning. But now that those ships aren't there, that's one of the problems with these being in the water. They have to be somewhere within range in the water. If those ships are moved, it's almost like they were too successful over or too long of a period. Is that making sense? Because now everything's sort of moved then away, and it can't inflict those losses to affect the capital of rebuilding something or losing a ship now that they have then moved. Yes, it may have taken out of the fight, but in other areas. Does that, okay, I'm either an idiot or not making sense. Here we go. So Ukraine, the center capital of Kyiv, this is the northern push. I've seen the red areas of which Russia occupies since 22, the purple since 14, and the blue, which you'll see up in here, is within the last 2 weeks, the green over then 2 weeks. Now you can see some red on this map too. So they are updating areas, but interestingly, not updating the area up in the north in Ukraine's benefit. And this is linked to the MOD, but again, the ministry hasn't really said anything about that north. But here we see a lot of ground made around Tabayevka, Berestove, Novoselivsky in here too by then this red movement. Of course, what we presume is trying to get then to the river here to try and have some effect on Kupiansk down the line and splitting this into a north and south element. Now this is then backed up in here through Suryak's map. Someone did email me how to fix this. I didn't read it yet. I apologize. But we can see down in here, you can see some ground being made. Now, if we take in, this is Kuzimivka. So if we just zoom in one, we can then see Kuzimivka. So just in this area in here, so this green in here, this will now be a grey or red, just because this is so short in here. So 600 meters, even red to red. So what I think Suryak is showing is just the same amount of movement here, but this the closing in up of that, which I would presume as well, and the movement out from Tabayevka. So we have seen some movements there. Now, let's then move our way down to the south a little bit. Now, no changes in through the Seversk front, no changes in Bakhmut. Now, no changes seen here around Toretsk or New York on this map, but we'll show you then another map here. What then Suryak is showing is, if we just zoom in, one, we have Pevnechny, Druzhba, that just where, see this train track goes out on a right angle, just in this area where my cursor is, that there is some ground being made by the Russian forces in here. And this is why we use multiple maps to try and confirm things when we see multiple bits move. So maybe just hang out and wait a second on this. Now we just move to the west. Now, Ivanivka, we can see some ground being made here by the Russian forces, and some, like a little sliver down the Zeleny here too. Again, trying to push for Pokrovsk and potentially using then the distraction in the north, what is happening with maybe some reinforcements down into this area not being available, or weapon systems, we're not too sure on that yet, but to try and push further in here and get closer to Pokrovsk as well. And we do have this updated across the map, so Noel reports. He shows up around this Ivanivka. He shows an update here, I think over a few days, but again, we know there was definitely some update there. And then we have Suryak update right here, same area again. That means we can confirm that there was movement right in there. Now we come down Nevelsky here. We did speak about Nevelsky and how the map here has moved and then slowed and moved. So then we do have footage today, right in this building here. So this building right in here, so right on the edge of the red and grey, but we do have a confirmation due to a flag then, a flag being raised by the Russian forces just here. Poor quality video, potato camera again. That's some movement there. Remember, there are claims that Russia is up into these buildings, but we will wait and see. Now, Krasnohorivka, we can see that the remainder of these blocks in at least sort of the main part have been taken by the Russian forces in there today. Now, the last update I have is what I call Novomaylivka, Paraskovskia, Konstantinivka front in here. Now, this is shown very differently across these maps, but that there is just some movement into Konstantinivka right here, where the grey zone is showing. This dot here, this is Paraskovskia. So Suryak is saying that's under control. This is saying it is grey zone. I don't think this grey zone shifted No, it did not. Now, what I just want to do, because I didn't actually realize this had then 2 map updates for the day, and I was working off the first one, apologies for any red zone shift. So let's actually go back up the maps and have a look. My bad on all of that. So just down to the south of Pereskovskia and as well out to Vesely here. Oh, no, I'm an idiot. That is actually the first map update from yesterday. Then we got a second one further on. Anyway, I won't cut that out of the video. Legends, that is all I have for you today. I hope you're having a fantastic day. It'll be great to be back in the studio wearing a suit and tie. Look after yourselves, and I'll speak to you tomorrow. Thank you. Bye-bye.